Hello and welcome to Megatrip, the travel channel that inspires you to adventure. You join me here in Kuala Lumpur. Now, if you watched our last video, you'd have seen that we took a little tour, a guided tour around the kind of old town, the heart of Kuala Lumpur. And it led us to thinking, I mean, I'm a big advocate of local guides, generally. I'm not gonna lie, the one we did the other day, the one we used, wasn't the best, wasn't amazing. It was doing a decent job, I think. So we thought, well, what if Lizzie, who's traveling with me, could pretend to be a tour guide for the day? So she's used a little bit of ChatGPT and she's put together a nice little itinerary. So that's what we're doing today. Anyway, here's what's coming up on this episode of Megatrip. Think Southeast Asian mega city. So last night we went to a lovely, and I mean lovely, little restaurant, wine bar called Juno. Jungle Habibi. The muddy convergence, if you like. It's really, really pretty. Quite enjoying it. Tell me, what on earth is that spray about? Through the magic of editing, you now know more than I do about what's going to happen on this episode of Megatrip. Well, like I said, we're trying something different with our self-guided or Lizzie-guided tour today. But first of all, let's give a little bit of practical advice, as I like to. And you'll have probably heard me talking about this on other videos in other countries in Southeast Asia. We got here today using Grab. Now, Grab is similar to Uber, but maybe a bit more similar to something like Careem in the Middle East or Noon. It is an everything app. Highly recommended. If you're coming out here, make sure it's downloaded on your phone. You can get food, you can get taxis, it's safe, you can pay by card. Anyway, that's my top tip. Before we go look around, first, cue the music. When you think of Kuala Lumpur, what do you think? You think Southeast Asian mega city. You think Petronas Towers. You think big buildings. But it's not all that. We've actually come to a little district, a very interesting little district called Kampung Banggu, I think. I may have to dub that. I might have got the name wrong. But this, interestingly, is a settlement within a settlement. In 1899, the British colonial rulers here, they set this area aside, and they set it aside for Malays only. And it hasn't been developed, it's not been allowed to be developed. You have to be ethnically Malay to live here. The property cannot be sold on the open market. And it's a little enclave below the skyscrapers. So here you can see the skyscrapers up into the cloudy skies of KL. But right next to them, in this little enclave, you see this. These small, traditional buildings, populated purely by Malays. Very interesting, very different. I've not seen anything quite like it in my life. Anyway, let's carry on looking around Kuala Lumpur on this exciting, different tour with our different tour guide. Yala. So maybe, Megatripper, I should give you a little more insight into why we're doing this tour this way today. What's going to do this like self-guided tour around Kuala Lumpur. So last night we went to a lovely, and I mean lovely, little restaurant, wine bar called Juno. I'm going to drop in the description a link to where that is. Definitely go there. The owner's a wonderful guy. We had a great time. Amazing chicken burger, the emotional chicken burger. I know it sounds weird, but it was great, absolutely great. So good, we took an extra one home with us to the hotel. Now, we had a chat to the owner and we said at the end of the night, maybe a bottle of wine or two in, we said, where should we go? What should we see as tourists? And he basically said, in Kuala Lumpur, there isn't much to see. Don't bother, get outside the city. Well, we don't believe that. We don't believe that for 1 second. And I think getting out on your heels is the way to do it. Ask ChatGPT, Google a little bit, and you get to see things like this lovely little local restaurant, just dotted on the street. Now, one thing we were told yesterday, and I'm not really sure I believe it, if I'm honest, is that 50% of Malay, or the Malay population, or people who live in Malaysia, more accurately, not ethnically Malay, 50% are obese. Now, like I said, I'm not sure I believe that, but maybe there is some truth to it. Every street corner, you see amazing food, lovely little restaurants, and so far, pretty much everything we've had to eat has been delicious. So if you're a bit of a foodie, maybe this is a spot for you. So as we walk around KL, it's probably worth me giving you some thoughts. What's it like as a city? Well, hey, we're here in the winter, in December, very end of December. It is hot, well, hottish, like 27, 28 degrees, 70, 80% humidity. So it is pretty humid, and it has certainly chucked down with rain since we're here. So what does that mean? It means it's a tropical climate, and it means the city is not just city, but it's also very green. Everywhere you go, there's trees, there's nature poking through the buildings. And it's also, I guess, a slightly older city. Yes, it is a modern metropolis, but there's some history here. You compare it to some Middle Eastern cities like Dubai, obviously, it's a very different vibe. There's some old colonial history here as well. So I guess in terms of places, it feels like if you've been, Colombo in Sri Lanka is probably quite close, although I'd say it's a bit more modern than that. Maybe Bangkok, but it's not as hectic or frantic or frenetic as Bangkok at all. It actually feels quite chilled and relaxed. So I guess if you want to go get some Southeast Asian food, enjoy some warm, sultry weather, and have a little wander around, KL might just be for you. So we've now walked about 20 minutes, something like that, a kilometre or two, and we have come to Masjid Jamek Sultan Abdul Samad here in Kuala Lumpur. And what is that, I hear you cry? Well, it's a mosque, and it was built by the British for the population here, for the Muslim population. And you can see here this beautiful building. And that's, I guess, an interesting thing about Malaysia. It is a multicultural society, and one that is controlled as such. So you have the Malays, who are predominantly Muslim population. You of course have the Chinese, who have either a variety of religions or none. And you certainly also have the Indian population, who were also brought in by the British. But anyway, back to this wonderful mosque behind me here. It was built in 1909, like I said, during that British colonial period. And it's the exact point where the Klang and the Gombak rivers come together, where they meet. And that is what Kuala Lumpur is named after, the muddy convergence, if you like. And all of that was done back before Kuala Lumpur had skyscrapers, government buildings, or in fact a defined centre. And in fact, really the very centre of the city was just a meeting point. And rivers were the foundation of that meeting point, where people came to fish, for commerce. And that is why the mosque was built here for the local population back in 1909. Absolutely no idea what's going on down here, but there's some steam, some water vapour, some spray coming out of some pipes down by the river. If you know why, well, you know what to do. Drop it in the comments, tell me, what on earth is that spray about? Come on, there must be some Malay locals out there who can tell me what's going on. just a few minutes down the river from the mosque is the central market here in Kuala Lumpur. And you can see it is a reasonably typical market. Lots of shops, lots of stalls, lots of souvenirs. And originally, this was a market for fruit and veg and for food. But rather than knocking it down, as you would do in some cities, renovating it or building it back up, they've actually preserved the central market. And instead, now it sells more touristy things, souvenirs, but also some local produce and local arts and crafts as well. So definitely worth a little visit for some retail therapy. But that actually says quite a lot about Kuala Lumpur. There is a tendency here to, rather than completely knock down and rebuild, but for the city to absorb slightly older elements. And it gives KL this really special kind of atmosphere that perhaps you don't see in other places. So anyway, have a little wander around, maybe buy a few little bits, and then getting a little bit hungry. It's probably time to find some food. From outside the market, it's perhaps even easier to see that more kind of historic element, the fact that they've kept this old building in the centre of Kuala Lumpur. Side, central market. It's the older building. And that really is indicative of all of KL. You have these older colonial elements, but they've kept them, and they're surrounded by the big mega structures, the big super buildings, just like this over here. You can see here on the edge of Chinatown, these cool, covered in muraled, old colonial style buildings with the skyscrapers of the KL skyline sitting above them. Not bad, huh? Not bad. It's a cool place. Get yourself down here. And if you're enjoying what you're seeing, do make sure to like the video. And of course, if you've got anything to say, if I've made a mistake, please correct me. I definitely have. Leave a little comment just down there in the bottom. And of course, please do, if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. Costs you nothing. It's just a little subscribe icon down there. It means you'll get a notification every single time I drop new content, and you are not going to want to miss what's coming next. So we talked about using Grab to get around KL earlier, but that's not the only way of getting around. You can also get the metro. And that's what we're doing now. We'll jump on this, a couple of stops, and we will be at our next destination. We're going to go and get something to eat, something very tasty, I am promised, by my tour guide, Walking with Lizzie. Metro, in case you're wondering, it is really cheap, really affordable, really easy to use. It's probably about 30 cents, 20 pence a ticket to go a couple of stops. So very affordable, very efficient. Don't be panicked about getting the metro here. You can look it up on Google Maps and it'll tell you exactly the way to go. Highly recommended. Quick, convenient, dodge the traffic. Okay then, Mega Tripper, as we come to the end of today's video, like I said, we've gone for something to eat and something a little bit special, at least super typical here under the shadow of the Petronas Towers, those two famous buildings in Kuala Lumpur. And this is what we have, Nasi Lemak. This is the most traditional of Malaysian dishes. So we have fragrant coconut rice, home fried chicken, sambal, which is like a spicy sauce, fishy sauce, dried anchovies, and peanuts. So I'm going to get stuck into this. Hopefully you've enjoyed your tour walking with Lizzie today here in Kuala Lumpur, and join us here on Megatrip next time for some more adventures. See you next time.